Okay, let's unpack this deep dive. Stepping into a management role.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big step,
So,
right? For so many of us, whether it's, your first time or maybe you've done it before, it can feel like you're suddenly responsible for
are you
everything.
totally thrown into the deep end, maybe without much of a map?
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
And you want to do a good job.
Yeah.
You probably know what kind of manager you don't want to be based on past
Oh,
experiences.
yeah. We've all had those.
But figuring out how to be actually effective,
Yeah.
that's the real challenge.
It really is, and that's why we're diving into some really interesting source material today. It's Julie Zhuo's book, The Making of a Manager.
Ah, yes.
And what's really unique, I think, is her perspective. She started as Facebook's first engineering intern
Wow, okay.
and basically learned management on the job during that, hyper growth phase in the thick of it in a Silicon Valley startup. Not exactly a textbook environment.
Right, no classroom theory there.
Yeah.
It feels more like lessons learned the hard way, which gives it that practical edge.
Exactly. And you see that in the praise for the book, too. Michael Bungay-Stanier calls it wise, practical.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Krieger, co-founder of Instagram, wished he'd had it when he started out.
I bet.
Gretchen Rubin says these are lessons she learned often, the hard way. And Ev Williams from Twitter and Medium says it's required reading he plans to hand out.
So it really resonates because it's grounded in that lived experience. It gets right to the useful stuff.
It really does. It cuts through a lot of the noise and focuses on core principles that actually help managers, new or experienced, help their teams succeed.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive then is to take all that rich material and really distill the essentials. We want to give you that clear map Julie Zhuo provides.
Extracting the core ideas, maybe some surprising truths, definitely the practical advice.
Think of it as a shortcut, maybe, getting you well-informed on what it takes to be a great manager without having to, sift through everything yourself.
Ready to jump in?
Let's do it. So maybe the most fundamental question first.
Yep.
What is management? What's the book's take?
Well, it starts with a core belief. The idea that a team working well together can achieve way more than one person alone.
Okay.
So your job as a manager isn't about being the best coder or the best designer or whatever yourself. It's not about doing everything.
Right.
Your job is to get better outcomes from the group, to increase the collective impact. Everything else kind of flows from that.
That's a really important distinction from being an individual contributor, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
As an IC, your work is like additive. You add your piece.
Exactly.
But you're saying a manager's impact needs to be multiplicative.
That's the term the book uses, yeah. Multiplicative. It uses this great lemonade stand analogy. Imagine you're managing the stand. If you spend your time selling lemonade yourself, you add your sales to the total. That's additive.
Makes sense.
But if you spend that same hour, say, training 2 employees so they each sell just a little bit more lemonade per hour, or maybe you use that hour to hire one really fantastic salesperson who can sell much more. Well, you've just generated a much bigger outcome for the stand overall.
Ah, right. You've applied a multiplier. Your leverage isn't your own hands-on work anymore.
Exactly. It's in improving the output of others. Your focus shifts.
And the book points out this shift isn't always seen as a straight promotion, particularly in tech. I found that interesting.
Yeah, that's a key nuance. In a lot of tech companies, becoming a manager is more of a transition to a different kind of role.
Not just climbing the ladder.
Right. There are often parallel tracks. You might have a super skilled individual contributor, like that 10x engineer idea, who has similar seniority, similar pay to a director managing a big team. The point is, it's a choice.
And it should be based on your strengths and interests, not just like assuming management is the only path up.
Exactly. Or being lured by the idea of calling the shots, which, as the book notes, often isn't the day-to-day reality anyway.
Okay, so you've made the jump. Or maybe you've been tapped for the role.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly you're in those first, say, 3 months.
Yeah.
The book talks about this, right? That feeling of being just overwhelmed.
Oh, completely relatable. I think the quote was something like, every day feels like a week.
Wow, yeah.
Just a constant stream of new stuff, new challenges.
But it also highlights this thing called the newbie advantage. What's that about?
It's basically this window, maybe the first 2 or 3 months, where people expect you not to know everything.
Oh, okay.
They genuinely cut you some slack. So the advice is use that, use the newbie card, ask tons of questions, talk to everyone, gather context, don't feel like you need to pretend you have all the answers right away. Humility, curiosity, those are your best tools early on.
What kind of challenges tend to pop up in that initial phase?
Well, Having difficult conversations is a big one.
Right.
Going from being a peer who just suggests things to needing to give direct, maybe a tough feedback as the manager, that's a hard switch.
I can imagine.
And just realizing the job itself might be different than you thought. The day-to-day reality.
So how do you cope with that? The overwhelm, the new challenges?
Well, the big message is seek support. Don't try to figure it all out alone.
Who do you lean on?
Peers, definitely. Both inside your company, folks who've managed longer and outside contacts, maybe facing similar things.
Right.
The author talks about learning from engineer friends or her entrepreneur friend, organizing these informal CEO training dinners.
Oh, interesting.
Or even just grabbing coffee with managers from other companies like Google or Airbnb just to swap notes.
And your own manager.
Critically important. Be honest with them about where you're struggling, what help you need. That open communication is key.
That need for support and openness seems like a perfect bridge to the next big theme. The human side of things, starting with self-awareness.
Absolutely foundational. The book argues you can't really lead or support others effectively if you don't have a decent handle on yourself first.
Your strengths, weaknesses.
Strengths, values, comfort zones, but also your blind spots, your biases. It's an ongoing journey, really.
There's a story about that, isn't there?
Yeah.
About getting feedback.
Oh, yeah, a really impactful one. Her manager, Stacy, actually compiled feedback from colleagues into this, 20-page report for her.
20 pages. Wow.
Intense, right. But it helped her calibrate her internal compass, as the book puts it, see where her self-perception was off.
Like where maybe her fears were overblown or where she wasn't paying attention to something important?
Exactly. Like maybe not setting clear expectations, that was one example. It showed her the gap between her intent and her actual impact.
Okay, so most of us probably aren't getting a 20-page report. How can we build that self-awareness practically?
The book suggests being direct. Ask your own manager specific questions, not just how am I doing, but things like what opportunities do you see for me to leverage my strengths more?
Okay.
Or what are the biggest things potentially holding me back?
And asking peers too.
Yes, but again, be specific. I'm working on my decisiveness. How did I handle that decision in the meeting? Or how clear was my communication on X?
And then you have to actually listen to the answers.
That's the kicker. You need the humility to really hear it, even the uncomfortable stuff.
And that self-knowledge helps when you hit rough patches that the book calls the pit. Stress, imposter syndrome.
Right, because managers often feel this intense pressure, like they have to know everything. And when they don't, which is inevitable, it can feel paralyzing. So the book offers tactics. First, just recognizing these feelings are super common.
Even for successful people.
Absolutely. It mentions Sheryl Sandberg feeling guilty about leaving work or Reese Witherspoon being terrified of public speaking. It normalizes it.
Okay, what else?
Acknowledge the feeling. Just admitting it, even writing it down, can help. Prioritize self-care boundaries, sleep, things that recharge you.
Makes sense.
And focus on what is going well. Practice gratitude and even visualization like athletes do to build confidence.
Okay, so understanding yourself is step one. Then there's relating to others. Building trust and empathy seems huge.
It's critical. And trust doesn't just happen, right? It's built over time through repeated good experiences.
There's an analogy about that.
Yeah, the caterpillar sweater analogy. You can tell your best friend they look like a caterpillar in that ugly sweater because you have history, you have trust.
Right, you wouldn't say that to a stranger.
Exactly. That trust allows for compassionate but direct feedback. And support doesn't always mean agreeing.
How so?
The example is the author's mom refusing her ice cream for breakfast as a kid. Felt unsupportive then, but fostered healthy habits long term.
Oh, okay.
And sometimes, especially in tough moments, just showing empathy, understanding their feelings is way more helpful than jumping in with advice.
So it's okay to not have all the answers for them.
More than okay. The book actually suggests showing up authentically with your own uncertainties sometimes builds better relationships than projecting perfection.
And related to not having all the answers, the book frames the manager more like a coach.
Yeah, exactly. And what's a coach's best tool? Asking questions.
To understand what's really going on.
Precisely. Don't just assume you know the problem or the fix. The book warns that unasked for help can easily feel like micromanaging.
Right. And ultimately, it's how you make people feel that sticks with them.
That quote is so powerful, isn't it? People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
Yeah.
There's an anecdote about an apology email the author received. She forgot the words, but remembered how it made her feel valued. Authenticity, empathy, they create that feeling.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. From the internal and relational side to actually leading the team effectively, putting that understanding into practice. How do you maximize potential?
A key principle is managing to strength for individuals and for the team overall.
Meaning?
Focus your energy where it has the most leverage. Help your top performers, the ones with high potential, get even better.
Instead of letting problem performers dominate your time.
You absolutely have to address poor performance, diagnose it, deal with it swiftly, but don't let it consume all your energy at the expense of developing your best people.
What about that classic archetype, the brilliant lone wolf? Super talented, but difficult.
The book's stance is pretty clear. Don't tolerate it.
Really? Even if they produce a lot?
Yeah, because they often create this divider effect, making the rest of the team less effective. They erode trust, collaboration. It might look good in movies, but
Not in reality.
not really. Hold the bar high for teamwork. Talented people who are also humble and kind do exist, and your team culture can shape behavior too.
But what if someone's just not the right fit? Nice person, maybe talented, but not thriving in this role or this team.
That's tough, really tough. The book uses a dating analogy.
No.
Someone might seem great on paper, smart, kind, whatever, but they're just not the right match for you. Same with jobs sometimes.
So it's not always about competence.
Not always. It might be the role, the team dynamics, the company culture. And the book argues it's actually kinder to be honest and help them find a better fit elsewhere.
Rather than let them struggle.
Right. Protecting low performers ultimately hurts the rest of the team. It quotes Jack Welch calling that false kindness.
Oof. Okay, central to all this is feedback. What makes feedback great, according to the source?
Great feedback inspires change and makes people proud. It's not just criticism.
It includes praise.
Definitely. And it helps people see the impact of their patterns. And critically, you need to give it way more often than you think.
That's the #1 request reports have.
Consistently. Aim for at least 50% positive feedback, the book suggests.
And has to be specific, right? That seems vital.
Absolutely vital. Vague stuff like be more strategic is useless.
There was an example about a presentation.
Yeah, Jorda's presentation. The author's initial feedback was too general. It wasn't until she said things like, you lost the room when you listed 7 goals in 5 minutes.
Specific moments.
The priorities felt unclear when you jumped to topics. That was actionable. Behavioral feedback, especially, needs concrete examples, maybe even discussed in person.
And setting expectations is tied into this clarity thing, too.
Fundamentally. The book says every major disappointment is a failure to set expectations.
That covers a lot.
Promotion timelines, how a manager will engage in projects avoiding that swoop and poop, or teams communicating delays early, and you got to spell things out. Don't assume shared understanding.
Any tips for making feedback more regular?
One suggestion is dedicating part of a monthly 1.1 specifically to feedback and career goals so project updates don't crowd it out.
And what if you're, like, really frustrated or upset when you need to give feedback?
Simple advice. Don't do it then.
Wait.
Yeah. Recognize your triggers, take a breath, postpone it, have the conversation when you're calm. Bridges built over months can be burned in a moment of anger.
Okay, that makes sense. So we're working with the current team. The next step is building and scaling that team. Hiring.
And the book frames hiring not just as, filling a gap because you're short-staffed,
Right.
but as a strategic opportunity. You're literally building the future of your organization.
And the hiring manager owns that.
Completely. It's your team. You partner with recruiters. They know the process, the market. You know the role the team needs. If no recruiter, well, you're doing both.
How do you figure out who the right person is?
Starts with being crystal clear yourself. Writing that job description, being really precise about skills, experience, even traits.
It mentions designers at Facebook.
Yeah, how requirements varied. Some needed intense detail orientation. Others needed deep empathy for specific users. Same title, different needs.
And the interview experience itself matters.
Hugely. Even if someone doesn't get an offer, a great experience reflects well on the company and can influence future decisions.
The book calls the manager and recruiter
Batman and Robin, partnering to make it smooth, fast, attentive for the candidate.
But interviews aren't foolproof predictors, right?
Definitely not. The book points out why. You can't really replicate the real job. Interviewers have biases. The blind orchestra auditions example is classic.
Right, where hiding gender increased women hires.
Exactly. And people change. Google found college GPAs didn't predict success long term.
So what are better predictors then?
Looking at past work is often much better. portfolio reviews, maybe having someone teach a sample class,
References.
talking to references, really digging in, and listening for strong internal advocates during decision meetings. A weak hire with lukewarm feedback is risky.
And structure helps.
Consistent questions, clear criteria helps reduce bias. And watch out for red flags like blaming past teams or arrogance.
The book also talks about diversity in hiring.
Yeah, the author's own experience. Initially clashing with leaders from different backgrounds, more structured places.
Because it felt different from the startup way.
Right, but she realized those different perspectives, while sometimes uncomfortable, led to better results overall. Research backs that up. Hire for aligned values, not identical styles.
There's a key story about scaling hiring, too.
Oh, yeah. Her manager, Chris, asked her this killer question. If I told you that hiring well was the only thing that mattered this year, would you do anything differently?
Ooh. That shifts your thinking.
Totally. Made her realize she wasn't treating it like the critical investment it was, putting in dedicated time, refining the process like a design problem. It pays off massively.
Especially for leadership hires.
Huge investments, high stakes. The advice is do deep research. Talk to potential candidates even if they're not looking, just to understand the role, the bar, especially if it's unfamiliar territory for you.
And finally, this idea of building a strong bench.
Yeah, that's a sign of a really great manager, always training, mentoring, hiring people who could eventually take over parts of your job or even the whole thing.
Doesn't that make you obsolete?
Nope. It improves the team's overall strength and frees you up for the next big challenge. Like Zuckerberg hiring engineers allowed him to focus on things like newsfeed. It enables growth.
Okay, so we have the team, we're growing them, building the bench. Now, how do we actually, make things happen? Process and execution.
And process can sound like a bad word, right? Bureaucratic, slow.
Yeah, exactly.
But the book defines it simply. Process is what actions we take to achieve our goals. It exists anyway. The differences between bad process heavy, arbitrary, and good process.
What does good process do?
Helps you execute efficiently, learn fast, make smarter decisions, move quickly. It doesn't hinder.
Where does good process start?
With a clear, concrete vision, not fuzzy, the author mentions her manager critiquing an early vision like help people connect as too squishy.
Not specific enough.
Right. What will actually be different? The book offers questions. Magic wand, what's true in a few years? Team reputation, team superpower, litmus test for what you work on.
Got the vision. Then you need a plan.
A believable game plan. Strategy, Eisenhower's quote. Plans are worthless, but planning is everything. The thinking and alignment are key.
And the strategy needs to fit the team.
Absolutely. Understand the problem. Focus your team's unique strengths. Like, the design team probably shouldn't make marketing videos. Play to strengths and align with the bigger org's goals.
Prioritization comes up again here. Seems crucial for execution.
Essential, that 80-20 rule. Focus on the vital few. Steve Jobs. Focus means saying no to the 100 other good ideas.
Like the Facebook photo tagging example.
Exactly. Simple, focused feature, massive impact, way better than dozens of minor things.
And knowing who's doing what.
The simple discipline. Who and by when. For everything.
What about really big, daunting goals?
Break them down. Counteracts Parkinson's law work expanding to fill time.
The author's book writing.
Yeah. Write a book, terrifying. Write X pages tonight, achievable, creates urgency. Treat big projects like a series of smaller ones. Milestones, realistic but ambitious dates. Buffer time, work backward.
So what does good execution actually look like day to day?
Prioritized work aligned with goals. Efficient decisions. Bezos' 70% info rule comes up.
Make the call without perfect data.
Right. Disagree and commit. Align once decided. No second guessing without new info. Clear ownership. Resilience. Learning from mistakes. Speed matters.
How do you balance short-term needs versus long-term goals? That's always tricky.
The book suggests a portfolio approach. Don't put all your eggs in one time horizon.
Like investing.
Kind of. Maybe a third of effort on short-term wins, a third medium, a third long-term bets. Keeps momentum while building for the future.
And process isn't set in stone. It needs to improve.
Constantly. Use debriefs, retrospectives after projects. Make them cathartic, instructive, not blamey.
Safe space for honest talk.
Yes, collective language. Our process struggled here. Document learnings, share best practices. Think airplane checklists for complex work. And yeah, process must evolve as the team grows. What works for 5 won't work for 50.
Speaking of growth, as teams get bigger, the manager's job itself changes fundamentally, doesn't it?
Oh, significantly. You shift from direct management, knowing all the details, maybe getting task updates in 1.1s, to much more indirect management.
Especially managing other managers.
Exactly. You just can't know every detail anymore. Your focus shifts. 1.1s become more about supporting your report's needs, not your status updates. You manage through patterns, principles, systems.
Sounds like a ton of context switching.
It is that every day felt like a week thing again. Jumping between topics, people, projects. It's part of the job at scale.
How do you manage that cognitive load?
Scanning your calendar ahead of time, good note-taking, deliberately scheduling focus time, it takes conscious effort.
And as things get crazy, there's that temptation to just do things yourself.
Yeah.
Which leads to delegation.
A classic manager trap, especially for former star ICs. The book points out two mistakes. You overestimate your own capacity,
I can't do it all.
and you underestimate your report's ability. Often, the best work comes from the person living and breathing the problem.
So delegation isn't just offloading work.
No, it builds team capability, empowers people, and frees you up. There's a story about the author accidentally delegating a meeting during parental leave. Came back, it was running better because someone else owned it fully. Delegate, even stuff you're good at, especially if it helps someone else grow.
This really ties back to that putting yourself out of a job idea.
It does. Your value isn't the tasks you do, it's the impact you enable. A report asked her, if you delegate everything, aren't you just overhead?
Good question.
Great question. The answer, no. Because new challenges, new opportunities always emerge. If you're looking ahead, there's always a next horizon where your leadership can multiply impact, often by learning totally new things yourself.
Okay, last big area, shaping the team's culture, the atmosphere, the behaviors.
And the book keeps it simple. Culture is what you do, not posters, not mission statements alone. It's the shared habits and values in action.
So how do you shape that intentionally?
First, decide what you value. What kind of team do you want? Long-term focus, holistic solutions, radical candor. Articulate it, communicate it constantly.
And then the hard part.
Walk the walk. You have to model the behavior. If you say transparency matters but hoard information, guess what the team learns? Actions, not words.
Incentives play a role too.
Huge role. Stated values mean nothing if incentives reward the opposite. If collaboration is valued, but only individual heroics get bonuses, well, you see the problem.
Any common incentive traps to watch out for?
Rewarding a lack of conflict can be one. People just stop disagreeing openly.
Leads to hidden resentment.
Exactly. Or rewarding the squeaky wheel, like always matching outside offers, which just teaches people to go get outside offers. Reflect on the gap between stated values and rewarded behaviors. Address misalignment. The hackathon is given as a positive example, incentivizing new ideas.
Wow. Okay, this deep dive into the making of a manager really lays out such a clear path.
It does, doesn't it?
From that core idea, management multiplies team impact, to needing that self-awareness, that internal compass.
Building trust, giving specific feedback.
Right, and seeing hiring is building the future, using good process to execute, delegating to free yourself up.
And knowing culture is about actions and incentives.
It really emphasizes that becoming a great manager isn't some final destination. It's a journey, right? Continuous learning.
Totally. And the book's opening thought is powerful. If you care enough to even be learning about this stuff,
You're already on the right track.
you've got a key ingredient right there, that desire to be better.
Okay, so that brings us to our final thought. Something for you to maybe chew on. Building on this idea of delegation and always finding the next challenge.
Given that your team has potential and there's always something new and important coming,
What's one thing, just one that you're currently doing, maybe holding on to a bit too tightly? A task, a decision, a detail.
that someone else on your team could own, maybe even thrive owning.
And if they did, it would free you up to focus your energy on that next big challenge, the one that could really move the needle for your team's future impact. What would that one thing be?
Thanks for listening. Visit our library and subscribe below for more book summaries. This has been a Sprint Reads production.